The job you think you're hiring for probably isn't the one you actually need, by Alejandro Franceschi. After some time in the job market, I've noticed something that requires some clarification. Nearly every role mislabeled for a creative director is, in practice, an art director position. And that distinction isn't semantics. It reveals something deeper. It indicates that many companies don't fully understand the kind of leadership they genuinely need and want. You can see it in job descriptions that sit unfilled for months. You can feel it in the few conversations that do happen when a recruiter or hiring manager pauses long enough to engage, human to human. This commentary is a reflection and a gentle nudge to rethink how we define creative leadership in the first place. Because creative directors are often mischaracterized, often reduced to madmen caricatures, or mistaken for portfolio powerhouses who can crank out assets on demand. But here's the reality. A creative director is not the person who makes the thing. That is what an art director and related creative departments and roles do under the supervision of a creative director. The creative director defines what and how the thing should feel like. That's a different skill set entirely. And it's messy, human, intuitive, and wildly unquantifiable. In my case, and for many others in this role, that ability comes from insatiable curiosity, not the fun fact trivia kind, the kind that pries open assumptions and rewires how a brand moves, talks, or even thinks. But curiosity has a funny side effect. It's subversive by nature, and that can make us inconvenient hires for institutions addicted to comfort or stagnation. The truth is, companies often say they want transformation, but they recruit for conformance. They say they want disruption, but they filter out the disruptors with AI screeners and or behavioral assessments that flatten complexity into buzzword compliance. Let me say it plainly. If you're hiring a creative director, you're hiring someone who should challenge you and perhaps most of the people in your institution, your startup, your company. You want iconoclasts, not natural climbers, not lifelong execs with a polished arc of promotions. You want people who have been in the trenches, who know how to read culture because they've lived it, they've breathed it, not just managed it. As Queen Victoria once said, beware of artists. They mix with all classes of society and are therefore most dangerous. Yes, that's exactly the point. A good creative director can navigate a Hollywood Hills soiree and lose themselves in a busted up VR chat room with a broke genius making strange, beautiful things halfway across the world. That kind of reach isn't an accident. And no, it doesn't always come from travel, but it truly does help. Why? Because it comes from immersion, observation, interaction, obsession, not sitting behind a computer screen. And it won't show up neatly on a resume. It won't pass through some Myers-Briggs filter. It probably won't even interview well on the first go because you can't decode a creative director through a panel with a random behavioral qualifier and quantifier checklist set of queries. You need a human conversation. Ideally, several of them, typically in informal settings, often selected purposefully, in places and moments where thoughts collide and conversations can wander. That's the work. That's the process. And the companies that skip it, you can usually tell. It's uncomfortable to recognize that the system we've built doesn't always reward the kind of creative leadership we claim to want. But that line isn't an insult. It's a mirror. When I said, you can usually tell, it wasn't meant as a jab. It was meant as a signal. It's a call to look closer at why some brands stagnate while others evolve, why some attract real talent and others wonder where it went. Creative directors aren't mystical unicorns. We're not impossible to find or difficult to work with, but the process to identify and engage us doesn't fit inside a soulless panel interview or a bleak keyword filter. You can tell when companies bypass the hard human work of engaging real creative leadership, just like you can tell when they've invested in it. It shows up in the work, in the culture, in the energy people bring to the room. And if you do skip that process, if you rush the hire, over-index on fit, or mistake execution for vision, you will feel it eventually in the product, in the brand, in the bottom line. This is not about shaming companies or in being combative. It's about being clear. It's about challenging them to live up to the creative excellence they say they value. You don't get originality through algorithms. You don't get soul through a screening tool. Creative directors operate in nuance, in subtext, in contradiction, and yes, in discomfort. Sometimes your own. Because if you do take the time to get it right, you can usually tell that too. So if a line like mine makes a company bristle, it might be the most honest thing they've heard or read all week.